The moment Johnny Depp strode onto the set of The View, the entire studio erupted into a storm of applause, gasps, and whispered excitement. Dressed in his signature layered accessories, a vintage fedora tilted just so, tinted glasses veiling his tired but unmistakable eyes, Johnny looked every bit the Hollywood legend, and the walking enigma. The applause faded, but the tension lingered like smoke in the air. He greeted the co-hosts with a charming smile, kissed Joy Behar on the cheek, gave Sonny Hostin a gentleman's nod, and exchanged a polite handshake with Alyssa Farah Griffin. Then, his eyes met Whoopi Goldberg's, a longer pause than necessary. She raised an eyebrow but said nothing. From the very start, something felt off. "Welcome, Johnny," Whoopi said finally. "Been a while since we had you on. How's life treating you?" Depp leaned back in his chair, his voice low and smooth. "Life's peculiar," he said with a smirk. "But it has a strange way of making sure we're always learning." There were chuckles, even some impressed nods. But the warmth wouldn't last. Joy tried to steer the conversation toward Johnny's upcoming indie film, a gritty, experimental project about a forgotten poet. He spoke with passion, clearly more comfortable talking art than headlines. For a moment, the Johnny Depp of yesteryear emerged, magnetic, creative, thoughtful. Then Whoopi pivoted. "Johnny," she said, leaning forward slightly, "you've been in the spotlight for more than just your films these past few years. You've been vocal about your trials with the media, the court of public opinion, cancel culture." He didn't answer right away. "But do you ever think maybe," she continued, "some of the drama that follows you isn't just bad luck, maybe it's the consequence of your own behavior?" The air tightened. Even the audience sensed the shift. Johnny's smile didn't fade, but his posture changed, shoulders stiffened slightly, fingers tapping his knee. "Whoopi," he said calmly, "I didn't come here to relive trials that drained years of my life. I came here to talk about my work, not to defend my humanity." Whoopi nodded. "I get that, but you've talked a lot lately about redemption, about being misunderstood. Isn't it fair that people want to hear you acknowledge what was in your control?" Johnny looked her straight in the eye. "Redemption starts with truth, and the truth is more complicated than soundbites. What I lived through, what was taken from me, I don't owe that explanation to anyone sitting behind a coffee table." The tension was palpable now. Sonny Hostin looked visibly uncomfortable. Alyssa sipped from her mug like it was shielding her. Joy Behar opened her mouth to diffuse, but too late. Whoopi folded her hands. "It's not about dragging you, Johnny. But when you've been the center of storms, it's okay to admit you caused some of the thunder." His eyes darkened. "And it's okay to walk away from platforms that disguise provocation as dialogue." There was a long, loaded silence. Then, suddenly, Johnny stood up. He pulled off his mic, placed it gently on the table, and turned to the hosts. "Thank you for your time," he said, though his tone was tight with frustration. "But I don't perform on cue anymore." Producers began scrambling behind the cameras. A stage manager rushed forward. The audience gasped collectively. "Running doesn't clear your name," Whoopi said softly, still seated. Johnny stopped in his tracks, turned back slightly. "Neither does crucifixion disguised as conversation." And with that, he walked off the stage. The View abruptly cut to commercial. But the damage, or the drama, was already done. The headlines would write themselves, but the internet had already begun crafting its own narrative. Johnny Depp vs. Whoopi Goldberg was no longer just a TV moment, it was a cultural flashpoint. Johnny Depp, normally measured and mysterious even in chaos, was visibly agitated. He walked briskly down the hallway, his team trailing behind him in a whirlwind of whispered damage control. "I should have never come on this show," he muttered, removing his hat and running a hand through his hair. His assistant tried to speak, but he cut her off. "I don't need another courtroom. Not on live television." Outside, a black SUV waited, cameras already circling like hawks. Johnny paused before stepping in, looking back toward the studio doors. "They don't want conversation," he said, more to himself than anyone else. "They want confrontation." Inside, the fallout continued. Producers huddled near the stage entrance, discussing whether to cut the next guest or proceed as planned. Whoopi, meanwhile, returned to her dressing room, shaking her head with a kind of seasoned disappointment. She sipped water calmly while a production assistant asked nervously, "Do you want to address it in the next segment?" Whoopi set her glass down. "I'll say my piece. People saw what they saw." Back on air after the commercial break, the tone was different. Lighter, forced. Joy Behar attempted levity. "Well, folks, that escalated fast. Johnny Depp has left the building, and no, it wasn't part of the script." Alyssa Farah Griffin added, "It's always unpredictable here. That's what happens when you mix Hollywood, honesty, and hot coffee." Laughter followed, but it was uneasy. Viewers at home could feel it. Something unscripted had truly shaken the table. Social media erupted. Clips of the heated exchange between Johnny and Whoopi hit the internet within minutes. Different camera angles, audience reactions, even slow-motion breakdowns of the moment Johnny said, "Crucifixion disguised as conversation," began trending. Hashtags exploded. Hashtag Team Johnny, hashtag Whoopi was right, hashtag The View meltdown, and hashtag cancel The View fought for dominance on Twitter. The comment sections were brutal. On TikTok, fans edited dramatic black and white montages of Johnny walking off stage to violin music. Others remixed Whoopi's stoic expression with fire emojis and the caption, "Unbothered Queen Energy." By the afternoon, TMZ, Variety, and Deadline had published stories. Some painted Depp as a misunderstood artist ambushed by a liberal panel. Others framed it as another example of Depp avoiding accountability. ABC's internal teams scrambled. An emergency meeting was held to address the fallout. One executive reportedly slammed his hand on the conference table and growled, "Who books Johnny Depp without a script lock?" The network released a statement late that evening. Greater than, The View has always encouraged open, honest dialogue. While we regret that today's conversation did not go as intended, we remain committed to respectful discussion. We wish Mr. Depp well in all his endeavors. Depp's reps, not to be outdone, shot back with their own. Greater than, Mr. Depp appeared on The View to discuss his latest film and was not informed that the interview would deviate into aggressive questioning unrelated to his project. He reserves the right to remove himself from environments that no longer reflect integrity. Still, the drama wasn't over. The next morning, Whoopi addressed the incident at the top of the show. "Look," she said, addressing the camera directly. "We bring people on here to talk, not to babysit egos. I've been in this business longer than most tabloids have existed. I've seen brilliance, and I've seen breakdowns. What you saw yesterday, that was someone who didn't want to be challenged. That's fine. He walked away, that was his right. And this is mine." The audience applauded, loud and long. Meanwhile, Depp went radio silent. His Instagram account posted a single photo, a close-up of a chess piece, the knight, lying toppled on a marble board. The caption read, "Some games aren't worth finishing." Speculation surged. Would he cancel the rest of his press tour? Would this impact his career rebound? One thing was certain. Johnny Depp and Whoopi Goldberg had clashed on daytime television, and neither had backed down. The aftermath was bigger than a walk-off. It was a showdown between legacy and legend, with the world watching every frame.